Today, we are going to talk about a very relevant topic, that is social inequality. Human being is a social creature. This is known to all of us, and we have a tendency to live in groups. From time immemorial, there is a tendency between the human beings to live collective life. This is the basic human nature that human being loves to stay in groups. The groups can be small, can be very large group. And whenever we are talking about society, from the perspective of social geography, we can divide the social groups on various scales and various levels. Those levels goes from micro to macro scale. For example, when we are staying in the family, it is a micro social group. Family. Here we live with our parents, our father, mother, and other relatives, with few people. If you look at the number of people in the group, which is called family, it is lesser number. And the geographical area that is occupied by these social group called family is also very micro. For example, we stay in a single home. Okay, so that single home is a micro space. That is why, due to very less number of people and their occupancy in very less area, we call it a micro social group. Now, if we move on, the arena and the membership of the social group increases when, suppose, we are talking about neighborhoods. Okay, we live in certain localities. There we have our peer groups, we have our friends. Okay, that is the time when we are in a part of meso-social group. Because if you look that the areal extension of your locality is more than your family, it is not anymore a single house, but the areal expansion of a meso-social group is greater than the family. That is why it is not a micro-social group, it is meso-social group. Okay, because our locality has a certain area and it is group of homes or group of houses. Okay, and we live collectively in that meso-social group. Now, come to the next point. What is macro social group? Now, from our locality, we can move on. We all stay in a certain state of India. So, or we stay in a single country, which is called India. So, on that basis, we belong to a very large social group, which is called our country, which is India. Okay, so we can understand that is India. And India is a meso social group, not is a macro social group, because it is greater than our locality. And my dear students, just remember one thing. Have you noticed that, you know, as we are moving upward in the scale or in the ladder of social groups, what happens? The thing happens that, you know, we are, as we are moving upward, our contacts or our familiarity with the other persons of that particular social group that what's lacking. You know, for example, in our family, we know each other very closely. We know each other's smallest traits, personality traits on a very personal level. We stay together, we eat together, we go out together. So there is a very close bonding. There is a very close need with each other. But in a locality, if you see, we don't stay together in a single house. So we know our local people, but not as much as we know the people with whom we stay in a family. And if we move upward again, then we can see that what happens, like for the country of India, we don't know each and every Indian people. As do we? No, we don't know each and every Indian. But though we don't know each and every Indian, but we have a feeling of commonality. We know that, you know, we all belong to a same country. That is why we know that it is something which is common thing within us, that is nationality. In terms of nationality, we are bounded together, we are closely tied up with each other. But my point is, when we are going for whether it is micro social group or meso or macro social group, all the members are not the same. They don't behave in same way. As a person, they are different. Their problems are different. Their demands are different. And we know that as a member of a social group, everyone tries to maintain their individuality, though they want to stay in a closely knitted group. On that note, I can remember that Michel Foucault, a great thinker, great social critical thinker, Michel Foucault gave one very good example that our society runs because man has this continuous conflict within them in the society. They want to maintain their individuality, but staying in the social groups. They don't, want to live isolated or alone. It is against the human nature. But at the same time, they want to maintain their very individuality. So there is always a clash, interpersonal clash, or intergroup clash within the various strata of society. And as they want to maintain their individuality, the clash goes on. And remember, students, that the clash is not always negative, okay? Because the society runs of this kind of small clashes. I'm not saying that these are conflicts. Sometimes it go up to the level of conflicts, but not always. Okay, you need to remember that we have various social processes like competition, we have cooperation, we have accommodation, we have assimilation. So many social processes are there which runs within the society. And why these social processes runs? Because we need to maintain our individuality within the collective groups. And in a micro level, if you see that we are maintaining our individuality all the time. So we are not the same. We are not equal all the time. So there is inequality, interpersonal inequality on micro level. All the human beings are different and they form the very basic unit of the society. That is why it is very important to address the inequality, which starts from interpersonal inequality. Yes, students, we need to remember that. Suppose we are staying in a family. It is, it happens that all the family members, though they are very closely knitted, they are, staying together for a very long time, but they have differences. We are not identical. We have differences as a person at the level of thought, personality trait with our parents, even. No? Our mother is different from us. Our mother is different from our father. So interpersonal differences are there. Okay. On a micro level, it is interpersonal differences. But when it becomes the macro level social groups, the difference between various social groups. Take the example of India. India is a very large country, as we know. It's a large country. So you can see that the society which we can see in West Bengal, it is quite different from the society of Karnataka. For example, if somebody is staying in Kolkata, the societal structure that person is habituated, the surrounding in which the person is staying, it is quite different from the societal structure of, for example, Bengaluru. Okay, it is a state, it's a city from Karnataka. So this difference in what? Difference in societal level, social structure, processes are same, but the intensity of the processes, the degree at which the processes like competition, cooperation, conflict, assimilation, accommodation, this runs, the level of social processes are different. So we can see there is intergroup societal differences, and we can see there is spatial differences also from the point of view of social geography. As geographers, we will concentrate more on the spatial inequality between social groups. And as a result, as a whole, we get the idea of social inequality, which is, I think, we all are aware of this term social inequality. We hear in social media, in electronic media, in newspapers, in newses, we can, hear all the time, people are fighting for the equal rights. I think these social rights, equal rights, these terms are quite common and quite familiar for us who are staying in the modern day society. So social inequality, that is my topic of discussion, which I'm going to address, and it is a burning issue. Before I dive into more detail, and with the special reference of India, obviously, two terms I think we need to have a clarity upon, that is social inequality and social equity. equality and equity. These two words. Equality means getting the same sort of privileges, same sort of things, same sort of facilities, same. Okay, no more, no less, no question or no room for comparison, no room for differences. Okay, same. This is the concept of equality. As I can remember, Amartya Sen once made a very good remark that nature made human beings unequal. How? Biologically. If you see, I look in a certain way, and the people whom I stay with in my family, they look different. My friends, my fellow colleagues in my office, they all look different. Different terms of like the very basic things like height, color of the eyeball, our physical strength, our intelligence quotient, all are different from each other. So Amartya Sen is pointing out that particular thing, that it is the nature made us different. So from the natural point of view, we can see there are differences, and when there are some differences, there will be some inequality. So what we are talking about, what we are looking at on a societal level, he brought the concept of equity there. That concept of equity tells us that we need to get what we deserve. That is the main point of equity. Not equal means if I am putting an effort, say in exam, if I have put an effort and deliver the answers which made me deserve to get 80 out of 100, then I should get 80. Okay. And if another student gave an effort which deserves to get a 90, he or she will get 90 marks. This is called equity, not equality. In the class, in a class, all the students cannot get the same marks. All the students can get the marks what they deserve. This is the concept of equity. So I have given one example on a very micro level of a classroom, or a particular batch. It's a micro social group. And for our entire country, all the regions of India goes for the same. That every social group, whatever their residential places, like from the geographical point of view, we can divide it in rural, urban. All the communities must get their deserved portion of facilities, okay, and the advantages. So whenever we will discuss about social equality, my dear students, you should not forget the concepts of social equity, because the concept of social equity is very important to get. Now, I want to delve into detail about this particular thing. Now we are going to deal with the concept of social inequality. Let's see that how the concept goes. Now, on that note, I want to introduce myself. As you can see, I am Dr. Supratim Karmakar, Assistant Professor, Department of Geography at University. Let's start or let's delve into the part of social inequality. Now, we need to go for the concept first. Social inequality is an area within sociology. Okay, basically, it is a core topic which deals with sociology that make a focus on the distribution of goods and the burden of goods and society and burdens in society. A good can be, for example, income, education, employment, parental leave, with examples of burdens are substance abuse, criminality, unemployment, marginalization. Okay, so you can understand that it is very important thing to talk about. Okay, now when we are talking about social inequality, we are actually talking about both the positives and the negatives. On a positive side, we have the distribution of income, which needs to be equitable and equal when the people are doing the same amount of job for same amount of time. There should not be any exploitation or anything which can overburden a certain group to for a certain work. Education. We know that education is a very basic right of human being. And nowadays we know that with the concept of education for all in India, up to a certain age, each and every children need to be educated. No children can be left out from this basic facility of education. So that will bring us to social equality. Next, employment. We all know that unemployment is a very big issue or a very vital and very crucial issue which needs to be addressed. So all the people who are capable enough to do a job and generate some income, they must have some job according to their qualification, according to their ability. Now, whenever we are talking about these positive things, it brings us to some negative things of the society, like substance abuse means consumption of drug, alcohol, these things, criminality, unemployment, and marginalization. Criminality is something to do with the offense or the deviant behavior of the society, because society runs on some norms. There are some rules in the society. There is such behavioral pattern which is not approved by the society. Okay, when someone behaves in certain deviant way, that leads to criminality. That should be banned for each and every section of society. Okay, unemployment, as I discussed, and marginalization. Marginalization means to make a certain group, certain section of people deprived from certain facilities, to give them a constant feeling of deprivation is actually called marginalization. Now, social inequality occurs when resources in a given society are distributed unevenly. Means somebody gets more and a larger section gets less, typically through norms of allocation that engender specific patterns along lines of socially defined categories of person. Okay, it is the differentiation preference of access of social goods in the society brought about by power, religion, kinship, prestige, race, ethnicity, gender, age, sexual orientation, and class. There are lots of terminologies which I have used, like religion is one of the major bases of social group in India. Kinship means the family tie-up, that is called kinship. Prestige. Prestige means the social status, what we say, that is mainly based on the nature of occupation, the income level. So these are called prestige. Race. Race means the origin or the genetic nature or the genetic identity of human groups. Ethnicity. Ethnicity is more to do with culture, like Bengali is a linguistic ethnic group. When we go to the South India, if we are talking about the Tamil people, they have a different ethnicity, they have a different cultural orientation. Gender, age, sexual orientation, and class. Gender is a very crucial issue upon based upon which the social discrimination, social inequality happens. Now, we moved on from the concept of gender binary. Now we are moving on to the gender fluidity. So the concept of gender equity or the concept of gender equality goes more and more deep, because now we actually do not have only two genders. We have numerous numbers of genders, uh, and the concept of LGBTQ, I think all of us in the society now we are aware of. So we can see that the distribution of facilities, resources of the society, that needs to be equal among all the gender groups, all the age group, even all the people having certain sort of sexual orientation. Okay, some social rights needs to be included in here. Everybody must have the right to generate income, right to get health care, right to get freedom of speech, education, political representation and participation. Political representation and participation means, as in India, we know about the electoral system. In election, we take part, and when we become adult, above 18, we have that right to cast our vote. Now, there are two major ways to look at in the concept of social inequality. Inequality in conditions and inequality in opportunities. Inequality conditions refers like the distribution of income, distribution of wealth, infrastructure, like housing is a very good example. We know in Indian society, it is very unfortunate to see that there are lots of people who are homeless. And if you go to any area, any locality, you can see various housing types. And I'm not talking about only the architectural styles, but the facility or the condition of the housing. You can see there will be like very good housing conditions, two-story, three-story building, multi-story building, very beautifully decorated and demonstrated housing complexes, apartments. Along with that, you can see there are houses which are totally dilapidated, unmetalled houses, earthen houses, especially in the rural areas if you go. So you can see that looking at the house only, you can understand that how social inequality works. Okay, the people who are having very low income, they used to stay in the dilapidated houses because they don't have the access to enough resources to rebuild their houses, to decorate their houses. Okay, and there are people who are staying in multi-million dollar mansions in the same society. And there are people who are called pedestrian people who don't have the roof over their head. They are homeless population. Okay. So students, you can imagine the level of inequality, level of social inequality, and level of inequality in the distribution of the facilities. Okay. And you can see in the level of opportunities also, unequal chances. What are the opportunity? Opportunity means to get the opportunity of education, to get the opportunity of proper health service, to get the similar kind of treatment by the criminal justice system. You can see that each and every children today in our society do not have the same amount of opportunity to be in a school or in a college. Okay, because just take the concept of child labor. The children who are working in various sectors of our economy, they don't have the opportunity to go to the school. A large section of people, large section of children still today remain uneducated. That means they are not having the equal opportunity. And that is not only, but the number of educational institutions are not, very much desirable, very much fulfilling. So the number of seats are limited. Though the government is very much working towards, increasing the number of seats, that makes, that gives the opportunity to each and every student to be in that part of the education system. So these are two dimensions to look at from towards the concept of inequality. One is inequality of conditions, another is inequality of opportunities. Now, economic inequality. The major form of inequality when we are talking about this is in unequal distribution of income and wealth. You can see that this unequal distribution of income is the origin point of all the other inequalities. As I give you the example, like the inequality in housing condition. Why it happens? Because of the unequal distribution of income. Unequal distribution income or less income leads you to spend more on like basic things like food or clothing. So people don't have a very huge amount of remaining money in their hand at the end of the month or at the end of the year, so they can go for a better housing condition. So they can go for a better housing condition. They don't have that amount of money in their hand at the end of the year or end of the month. So this lesser amount of income leads to poorer housing condition. You can understand. So that economic inequality, as the researchers are talking about, is the basic root cause of almost all other inequalities. From the poverty-stricken family, those who don't have a very good amount of income, their children more prone to go outside for income at the age below 14, when they are supposed to go to the school, but they're not going to the school because of the lack of income in their family. So you can see the inequality in income is leading towards the inequality in education, housing condition, then education. And as you can see, these children, when they grow up, they will remain uneducated. Okay, so they won't be fit for any high level job in quaternary or queenary sector, means the administrative work or the academic professions. So they have to be satisfied with some job which are situated in a lower hierarchy. So inequality in employment, that will be generated from that inequality in income. So they won't get the privilege to stay in a very well accommodated houses, well conditioned houses. They can't avail their private transports like private cars or something. They won't be able to get proper financial facilities also. So you can see that one single inequality of income, which in other terms we say economic inequality, can generate all the other forms of social inequality. That is why the social geographers are mostly interested or highly focused on this issue of economic inequality. Now, ethics and inequality. All the topics have some philosophy. So, ethics will tell us that whether inequality is inevitable in the society. Now we can go and remember the words of Amartya Sen, that whether inequality is a common thing, we have to accept the concept of inequality, or we need to fight against the concept of inequality. Philosophical questions about social ethics and the desirability or inevitability of inequality in human societies have given rise to a spectrum of ideologies to address such questions. We can broadly classify these ideologies on the basis of whether they justify or legitimize inequality. Okay. Now, one end of this ideological continuum can be called individualist and the other is collectivist. In Western societies, there is a long history associated with the idea of individual ownership of property and economic liberalization. The ideological belief in organizing the economy on individualist lines, such that the greatest possible number of economic decisions are made by the individuals, not by collective institutions. Laissez-faire free market ideology. Okay, here we can see that the individualist point of view, they are saying that inequality will be there because there is a concept of economic liberalization or individual ownership of property. In the Western society, we can see there is laissez-faire or free market ideology. Means you will earn on the basis of your own capability. You have to compete with the other people of the society and you have to achieve the opportunities of generating more income on the basis of your capability. If you are capable, you will generate more income and you will be rich. Your economic prosperity will be more than the others. So this is something is called economic liberalization. Means you have the liberty to generate more and more income. You don't need to look at on a collective part that whether this income is well distributed or not. You don't need, as an individual, you don't need to look at other society fellows. Okay, if you have the capability, you can earn as much as you can. Okay, this is called economic liberty, taking economic liberty. Now, inequality, we can deal with inequality in a part, in a way that is called horizontal inequality. You know, till now, what we are discussing inequality on a vertical strata. Okay, now the horizontal inequality is the inequality that is economical, social, and other, that does not follow the difference in an inherent quality such as intelligence, attractiveness, or skills of the people, or probability of cooperation. In sociology, this is particularly applicable to forced inequality between two subcultures living in the same society. Inequalities between culturally formed groups, not economically formed ones. So what is horizontal inequality? It is very interesting to discuss about. Like when till now we are discussing about the difference or the unequal distribution in terms of wealth. So that is vertical. There is an hierarchy. There is a hierarchy we are talking about. But horizontal inequality is forced inequality. Means to separate caste or to separate cultural groups. Maybe they are having the same amount of income, but there are some social stigma that is hindering them to get the same amount of facility and making the living condition unequal. You can understand that is making their standard of living or social conditions unequal. So that is called horizontal inequality. In India, there is caste system. When one particular caste gets some sort of privileges and another particular caste having the same amount of money, same amount of wealth, they are restricted, to be a part of some certain festivals. They are restricted to move freely, especially in the rural area, in each and every areas of village. So these kind of inequality, which are forcefully attributed to the social groups, it is called horizontal inequality. My dear students, please look at the thing. There is no vertical distinction. I'm talking that they are having the same amount of wealth. They are generating same amount of money, but on the basis of their caste, which is nowadays determined by the surname, they are having unequal treatment. This is called horizontal inequality. Now, when we are talking about inequality, one question may arise in your mind that inequality can be permanent. No, all the inequalities are not permanent. Society is a dynamic thing. Social structure also changes along with the social strata. Okay, so one individual can move up and down in terms of their social status. So social inequality can be broadened and sometimes it can be narrowed down. For example, if a particular family is staying in a dilapidated house, having a lower amount of income than the others, after one or two generations, one of the member of that family may become highly educated and be able to get a job on a higher rank position and generate a very good amount of income so that the family can move out from that dilapidated household and go to one household which is quite well accommodated and in a good condition house. So you can see the social inequality between that particular family and the surrounding who used to live in a good condition house and that particular family used to live in dilapidated house. The social inequality is great. But now, as after one or two generation, one of the family member become quite well off, so he or she can manage to make the entire family to move out in a good condition household. So the social inequality between that particular house and the surrounding houses are narrowed down. The inequality was not that much visible now. So in terms of education, in terms of income, in terms of facilities, the social inequality can be a dynamic concept. One social group, whether it is ethnic group, religious group, whatever, or a certain income group, they can move from one social strata up to the another higher level social strata, which will be resulting in narrowing the gap of social inequality. This is called when a social group is moving out from a particular social strata to another social strata. It is called social mobility. Okay, the achieved status of a particular social group can be changed with the help of the change in the distribution of income, facilities like education, healthcare, and all. Now, I'm coming to a very relevant issue, that is social class. And this is one term which is highly used, like social class. Okay, class, we say it reflects, a particular lifestyle, particular opportunity, culture, their activities. All these signifies about a particular social class. We generally use these kind of terms, na? That lower class, middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class, higher class, all these are on the basis of especially the ownership of wealth. This social class has happened to be one reflection of the ownership of wealth which someone has. This is very important. Class. When we say a certain section of people, they're middle class, that means they are not very much impoverished, or they are not very much well equipped with their income, like the upper class. Okay, so as a certain social group is having more and more ownership, more and more uh, hands over the resources, especially income, in terms of income and wealth, they move upward in the ladder of social class. So social class is also a very dynamic concept, and social class is very much related with the concept of social mobility. Okay, social class can be demarcated on the basis of gender, can be demarcated on the basis of race, caste, ethnicity. You know, like you can see, here's a line that working class are those people in blue collar jobs and usually affects the economic level of nation. Middle class are those who rely mostly on wife's employment and depends on the credits from the bank and medical coverage. So you can see the lines which all somehow denoting towards the income, income level of a particular family. Okay, their ownership over wealth. So the concept of social class and inequality is very important because whenever we will hear that upper class, upper middle class, lower class, these kind of terms in a society, you need to understand, my students, that there is social inequality because these terms reflect social inequality. Now, how to measure them? As I'm saying, the you know ownership of over the wealth, over the opportunities, how to measure? There are some quantitative parameters. Quantitative means we can do some mathematical derivations, we can do some statistical techniques to actually measure the social inequality and get some concrete result, quantitative result, not qualitative one. The quantitative variables mostly oftenly used as indicators of social inequality are income and wealth. Okay. In a given society, the distribution of individual or a household accumulation of wealth tell us more about the variation of well-being, GDP, the measurement of statistical dispersion like Gini coefficient. These are the measurement, gross domestic product. Okay, national income. There are various parameters used by the economist to measure the gap, Lorentz curve. Okay, the line of equal distribution and the Lorentz curve, and the difference between the gap is called the inequality. Okay, so we can use quantitative parameters like GDP, okay, per capita income. Okay, there is concept of net domestic production. Okay, so we can calculate the national income of a country to measure the economic inequality. And that economic inequality can be reflected as social inequality. Now, along with the economic inequality, we in our society, we can see gender inequality is a very important issue. So Gender Development Index or GDI is one of the major parameters to define the inequality between male and female of a certain area of, or especially for a certain country. We are having the parameters like per capita income of male, per capita income of female, school enrollment ratio of girl child, school enrollment ratio of the male childs. Okay, then we are having the parameters like longevity of life. Okay, life expectancy of the females, life expectancy of the males. So these kind of sex and gender based indexes can be calculated, or there is gender disparity index. Okay, or gender gap in terms of literacy, in terms of work participation. These are these can be measured to actually get one very vivid and clear idea of gender inequality. Each and every sector, like whether it is division of labor, whether it is opportunity in research, in factories, in all the spheres, in education, in politics, we can see some differences in representation or in facilitation of male and female. There are discriminations. So gender inequality is one of the major dimensions which needs to be addressed when actually we are discussing about the social inequality. So first, the income inequality, then gender inequalities parameters. Now, race and ethnicity, which is very important, and it has some very humanitarian angle to it. Whenever we will discuss about race and ethnicity, you know, racial inequality is very unfortunate to have, because race and ethnicity is something which is attributed to the people by birth. And here, students, you need to remember, in terms of race and ethnicity, there is no question of social mobility. It is a social structure which is totally socially immobilized. So, if you are born with a certain ethnicity or certain racial identity, it will be there with you lifelong. There is no question of changing it or eliminating that particular identity. You cannot eliminate. Okay, so you can understand that when we make some difference in terms of caste, like in India, there was a point of time when the stigma, like untouchability, was there, which is totally inhuman. On the basis of the surname, on the basis of some economic activity or occupation, we used to discriminate, we used to marginalize certain group of people on the basis of their racial identity, on the basis of their ethnic identity, which is not at all accepted. Okay, so we know there is social exclusion of the minority groups, there is oppression, there is extremist, brutality in certain section of society that has been shown against certain ethnicity or certain ethnic groups. Still, in our country, we know there are certain ethnic groups, especially from Northeast India, who feels deprived, who feels insulted when people discriminate towards them on the basis of their physical appearance. These things are very much regressive for a progressive society, and that hampers the total progress of the society. Age is another basis on which we can see inequality. Age. We know that if we look on the western side of the world, United States of America is like suffering a problem of aging population. The aged population are not looked after by their children. You know, there are so many times we can see in today's society the aged peoples are abandoned by their family, or they're just thrown into some old age homes, not getting proper facility like medical facilities which they need, or towards the children. In the poverty stricken countries, we can see in a section where the poverty stricken people belong to, they make forcefully the children to work in a very harmful situations, in a very harmful working conditions. So age is also another thing which calls for unequal treatment, which should not be. Here we should know the concept of equity comes again. The people belong to any age must get what they need on that particular age. It is very important. Healthcare. In terms of healthcare, we can see inequality in our country and as well as throughout the entire world, because healthcare system is a very much need for any sort of society. So it is very important to have a proper healthcare for each and every section of people. And here we actually need the equal opportunity or equal facility for each section of people, for each individual, because healthcare is the very basic need for the survival of any human beings. So from the perspective of humanity, humanitarian way, healthcare system needs to be equally developed and equally distributed among all the section of people. Okay. Now, if we see, there are few theories, like two main theories of social inequality. One is functionalist theory, another is conflict theory. Functionalist theorists believe that inequality is inevitable and desirable and plays an important function in society. Important positions in society require more training and thus should receive more rewards. Social inequality and social stratification, according to this view, lead to meritocracy based on ability. The functionalist theory, they believe in that, you can remember, as I told earlier, economic liberty. They think that if there is inequality, there is class division, so there will be a sense of competition among the groups to get more and more ownership over the wealth, to achieve more and more income, okay, to achieve more and more success, to get their social due. Functionalist theory thinks that if there is stratification, if there is competition between social groups, it will work for the merit of the society. It will polish the ability of the people who are staying in the society. Okay. Conflict theory, on the other hand, view inequality as resulting from groups with power dominating the less powerful groups. They believe that social inequality prevents and hinders societal progress, as those in power repress the powerless people to maintain a status quo. In today's world, this work of domination is achieved primarily through the power of ideology, our thoughts, values, beliefs, worldviews, norms, and expectations through a process of cultural hegemony. Conflict theory believes that social inequality or the social stratification in a negative way. They are talking that when there is a concept of domination, there is a power role, the concept of power role and inequality in the distribution of power, there will be conflict and there will be inequalities. Okay, there will be certain section of people who will, and they're the small section of people in terms of numbers of people, who will accumulate all the wealth and will have all the power to dominate the larger section of people who are comparatively powerless in comparison to those powerful people. So this power repress the inequality. So it will generate more and more conflict in the society. This will generate more and more delinquent behavior, criminality, offense. So conflict theory is talking about a very heinous outcome of social inequality, which needs to be addressed and which is quite important to address if we want to make social integration. Now, come to the strategy. What we can do to remove that social inequality. Actually, we cannot actually say that practically it is impossible to remove all sort of inequality, but we can go for a try to mitigate it to some extent, the social inequality. Pro-poor fiscal policy. Fiscal policy means the policy which are related to the distribution of income, distribution of wealth. Pro-poor fiscal policy. What does it mean? We need to have the policies of income which mainly focuses on the impoverished section of the society, because they are deprived people. These people are those people who don't have any kind of wealth. So that is why it is very much needed. It is very much needed to have a pro-poor fiscal policy. Next, better targeting of social programs. Government whether it is central government of any country or in terms of our country's central government, state government, or local government bodies, they are targeting some social programs. You know, they are having some program like work for all, Gramin Rozgar Yojanas, okay, Shahari Rozgar Yojanas. There are social programs, but they are not well targeted. We often miss the target that who needs these programs the most. We need to identify those section of people who are actually in need those kind of social helps. Otherwise, if we are not actually targeting to the people, we are not actually looking at the section who are in need, we cannot reach to them, and we actually cannot bring any changes to reduce the social inequality. Now, participatory decision making, which is very important nowadays in any planning, we are talking about participatory planning. Means that the decision makers need to sit with those people who for whom the planning is going on. Means if we are making a plan for the poor people to generate some income, we need to sit with them, ask those people that what actually they want. And when we actually deciding our agenda or our strategies, to mitigate the inequality, they should be a part. Those poor people, those people who are lacking wealth, opportunities of job, they need to be the part of that decision making, so that decision making can be more and more rational, more and more connected to the real people. Revision of legislative framework. Sometimes we have the implementation part. On the implementation part, we see that the legislative protocols or the rules are so complicated that it becomes very difficult to actually promote or actually implement some social policies or some social programs. So we need to revise them and to make them more lucid and more flexible. Promotive action. We need to promote the social awareness programs. There are so many government policies, there are so many government aids for improvement of the condition of the poor people, but they very often unaware of that social programs. So that awareness, the promotion of these programs are very much needed. Addressing regional inequality, not only in between social groups, but the regional inequality must be addressed. Being a social geographer, is our responsibility to look at the regional inequality. As I have told that, the inequality between the rest of India and the Northeast India, the characteristics, the regional characteristics, the terrain, the climate, the natural vegetation, their resource base in Northeast India is so different from the rest of the India. So the policy implementations could be modified, especially for them. The same policy cannot go for the rest of India and the Northeast India. So we need to look on a regional level while we are addressing the idea of social equality or social equity. Differentiated poverty reduction policies. Differentiated poverty reduction policy. We know about the poverty reduction policy, but differentiated here, this term is very important, because each and every region or each and every social group have various type of problems. They have their own problem. Each and every social group from each and every region of a country like India have their own social problems. So we need to address them individually. One single poverty reduction program may not be sufficient to address the entire India. That we need to know. It is not really uh, sufficient. Measuring other inequalities rather than income inequality. That is very important. We are highly focused on the income inequality only. Whenever you will learn about the social inequality, you will see the 90% discussion goes on the income inequality. Yes, it is the very basic form of inequality. But there are other inequalities also: racial inequality, ethnical inequality, gender inequality. All sorts of inequality must be addressed on a holistic way. We should not go for any kind of fragmentary approach. Okay, we must have some proper holistic way to look at these problems. Lastly, program monitoring and evaluation. Whenever we are taking any policy or any social program, we need, after the implementation of it, we need to look at those things, whether they are running on a favorable way or not. If they are not running in a good way, we need to rethink about these things. Okay, so that monitoring, continuous monitoring and evaluation, their effectiveness, okay, evaluation of their effectiveness is very, very important. Very, very important. So with that, we have come to the end of this particular topic of social inequality. Hope you understood the topic quite well. So you need to now look at this issue from various perspectives, various dimensions, and you need to add your own thinking and own critical evaluation for the society, and you need to develop your own way of thinking. Thank you.